Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, Intro to UX, what I call People Over Pixels. Thank you for joining and for registering to this session. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to cover the basic concepts of user experience, what's the difference between UX and UI, why do we need it, why do we need to have to do user experience, and what's the design process like. This session will be for around an hour and a half. For the last 20 minutes of the session, I would stay here for any questions that you have. So some of you might leave, the others might stay, or if you want to have a discussion after this, this presentation. So we're going to start. I'm just going to tell you a bit more about me for those who don't know me here. So I'm Lara Shikani. I'm a user experience and digital strategy consultant. I'm based in Beirut and I'm currently a freelancer. I also teach web and interactive design at a university, and I'm a UX trainer for startups and accelerators. And also I'm passionate about working with startups and accelerators because I believe startups are, especially these products, they need the most when it comes to the user experience. You either make it or break it. And then I have almost 12 years of experience only in UX and 15 years in total in the digital scene. So we're going to start with some fundamentals about what user experience is. So I'm just going to go through the general definition of user experience by Nielsen Norman Group. Nielsen Norman Group is founded by Jacob Nielsen and Don Norman. For me, they're the founders and the most reliable source on user experience today. They're a great source to follow for conferences and content and research. So the way they define user experience is user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with a company, services, and products. So the first requirement for an exemplary user experience is to meet the exact needs of the customer without fuss and bother. And just why we highlight fuss and bother is that we shouldn't let our customers work hard to try to figure out how to do things on our product. They shouldn't need to go through a training to understand how it works. Unless you're training to drive a plane, it should be very straightforward. So next comes simplicity and elegance that produce products that are a joy to own and a joy to use. And we focus on the word joy because we want people to love our products. We want people to come back. We want people to have a positive feeling after they've used anything that we're providing them. So true user experience goes far beyond giving customers what they want, providing a checklist of features. And we'll also discuss this later in the presentation. It's just about giving people way more than what they want. And that's what we need to figure out. And that's why we go through the design process. So in order to achieve high quality user experience in a company's offering, there must be a seamless merging of services of multiple disciplines, including engineering, marketing, graphical, industrial design, and interface design. As you see, interface design is one of these elements. But whatever you're creating, it could be hardware that has a software related to it. It could be service, actually, an offline service that is linked by a website. All of these channels, they're channels to communicate with your customers, the customer care, social media even. All of these should provide a seamless integration, not integration in terms of technical, but also in terms of communication. In terms of experience, I should feel like if I called you customer service, it's the same thing that if I visited your shop. People are dealing with me in the same way. It's the same tone. It's the same positive experience. And if you want to make it, trying to think about it in a simpler way. So user experience is actually how you feel about every interaction you have with what's in front of you and the moment you're using it. And I want you to think of, I want you to remember all of the things that you probably use, all of the products that you use. It's always that feeling that you have. You never make a conscious decision when you download an app and decide that you want to remove it. It's always something that you just have a hunch, or you just want to remove or keep, or you're coming back, because it's that feeling. This is what people memorize. We're human beings. We remember feelings. We're all around that. So that's why we say that user experience is that feeling that you have, because every time you're using something, we're adding to it. It's either frustrating, or it makes me feel smart, it makes me feel stupid, it makes me feel overwhelmed. All of these, is what people actually remember after using a product. And for a customer, all they want when they're interacting with you, it's very important for us to clarify the content. That's why I focus as well on content, because it's the most overlooked element on any product. Because interfaces are mostly words, and people mostly get tripped up by small details. Writing good microcopy is the fastest way to improve the interface. And what I say here is that sometimes we try to be creative. Sometimes we try to use words that are out of the box because we want to show we're different and we're engaging. But sometimes, and I've seen it a lot in user testing, it could be one single word or one message that makes people confused, and they might not click on a button because they're not sure what happens next. So having a clear microcopy is very important. And same thing for designers. Also, I see this a lot with designers, that when they're creating a design, they don't focus on the content, and they just put lorem ipsum, and they just put things that don't matter. And I don't know if some of you are designers and you realize that sometimes your clients would tell you, I don't like this. This is not my company. It's not because of the design. It's not because of the experience. It's sometimes because you wrote something that is completely off, or maybe sometimes a spelling mistake. So these are super important when it comes to product design. And here I'd like to focus on what Steve Jobs says, which was a change in the whole design way we design product. In Apple, when he said design is not what it looks like and feels like, design and how it works. And this is what changed the way we design products. Before, you used to spend a lot of time on analysis, then we move into design, then we moved into development. These sessions were not, or these phases were not overlapping. They were separate phases. We're done with them and we moved to the next one. And it had a lot of discrepancies, and it had a lot of experiences that weren't great because these three disciplines weren't working together consistently. And design is definitely the way to analyze a good design if it works well and it's clear for customers. Who's doing it right and why? We have, I'm featuring these companies because they've done it, and they've changed the way we interact with products. So Amazon, they can tell you what you want before you even want it. Apple, because of course they changed the mindset that design is how it works. The Airbnb, it changed the way we experience travel and the way we experience hotels, and we go stay at someone else's house and we still have a good experience. Something that wasn't easy to create. Same thing with Google, because they put the user at the center in all of their products. And focus on the user, and everything else will follow. So they build trust with their customers, and they deploy modern design principles. Don't think in terms of customer, they think in terms of fans for the brands. And you see that brands, followers of these, or customers of these brands, they're more like fans. They would swear by these companies because they allowed them to do something they weren't able to do before. And in summary, also, it's about making someone's life better by creating a meaningful experience. And that's what we want. We're designing for humans, not for robots. So the more we can make someone's life better and meaningful, the more we can get people to come back and to enjoy and to refer us to others. So that's what we should focus on. And if you want to make it simple, even for customers, really what people want, any customer, they want you to make them happy, to solve a problem and surprise them. Obviously, they're here because they have a problem. If what you're creating is nice to have, they will not be coming back often. But if you're solving something that is painful or that is frustrating, that would make them happy. And when we say surprise me, it doesn't have to be something really crazy. It can be something very simple, and it can be as simple as thanking them sometimes, sending them a nice message. It really doesn't have to be very complicated. Some of you have, like, these are deactivated some applications, or at least you decided to stop using a product and you deactivated it. And a lot of time you'd be like, you can get this email, okay, thank you for deactivating. If you change your mind, it's fine. Once I was deactivating a product and I just received this really very sad email with 5 sad monsters. They were like, we're going to miss you. It was just an application that I no longer needed. But when someone sends you something like this, even if they know that this might not bring you back, at least you're giving your customer a happy memory of let's say, the way they left your product. So it's not, what I'm saying is not, it doesn't have to be something huge. It's the little things that you can add to your product that gets people the element of surprise, and gets them to either come back or maybe make more effort, or at least remember you and recommend you, even if they don't want to use you sometime soon. Because sometimes people leave because they no longer need that product. It doesn't mean you're bad, but you have to be able to know that as well. So the elements of user experience, these are the elements that should be for every single thing you have on your product. This is the rule to follow for any interaction, any button, anything you have. So first of all, everything you have on your application should be useful. When we say by useful, it should be useful to the user. He should be able to, or she should be able to do something with it. Usable, meaning usability means that it works. So if there's a button that allows you to sign up, it should be clickable. They should be able to sign up. There shouldn't be any bugs. Valuable, meaning it should add value to the user, not just to you. It's very important to think that you need to add value to the user more before you add value to you. Or if you need something from your user, sometimes in our registration process or sign up, we ask so much information. So we want to know their age, we want to know their gender, because it'll give our database more information. But unless we clarify and tell them why we need this information and what's the value for them, we shouldn't ask this information. So maybe we can tell them we needed to know that you're above 18, or we need to know your gender to be able to send you personalized offers. So you can always ask for what you want, but you need to be able to also clarify it and explain to the user why. Also, it should be desirable. Of course, we're all visual people. We like products that look nice. So it should look nice. It should be findable, meaning I should be able to find it on my product and not look hard for it. It should be credible. So I should trust you. If there's a form to fill in my credit card information, one, I need to see that it's secure, and how are you measuring security, and all of the content needed to make me trust you as a product. And accessible, I don't know if many of you know what accessibility is, but accessibility is when you tackle people with disabilities for your product, meaning you tackle people who are blind, who are colorblind, who have any visual disability. When we tackle elderly who need bigger font size. So all of these things you can find in each of you on their phone. You have like an accessibility setting where you can change the colors, you can change the font, you can make the phone read your content. So all of these considerations are also things we need to consider. And also it depends on who my audience is. So if my audience is above 60, then we need to make sure that our product is accessible. If our audience is very varied as well, we need to consider people who are colorblind and with disabilities. We need to know the colors we're picking so that we don't confuse them when we're using our product. So these are the elements in user experience. If anyone has a question, please, you can drop it in the chat and I'll address it either directly or in a bit. And I want to use this example to show the evolution of product. I mean, I'm sure we all have some of these products to the left. And it's always a frustration that, it's not frustration, we know our buttons, and when it comes to our TV, if they still have all of these buttons, we know which are the ones we need, but it's always overwhelming. I mean, I think with all of these, I doubt any of you uses more than 4 buttons all in all, or 5 buttons. The idea that why products evolved into something like this remote to the right is that we're never there to do everything at the same time. And also we have to prioritize what we give our customers. So sometimes you turn on your computer every now and then, not every now and then when you want to use it, but you might change the setting of the brightness and the colors maybe once a week. So it doesn't have to be in your face. And that's the importance of products and prioritization of products and features, that we need to make everything in a journey, and users can access everything from the one to the right. They made it on the interface level, not on the remote level, and they improved the experience of products as well. And this is what if you want a successful consideration of a user experience is, because with these, you cannot give every single person a manual of how to use the product, especially if your product, or let's say the TV or the projector. I think projectors also have a very confusing remote. When you leave it in a room and you have a lot of people coming, you cannot leave a manual with all of these. So it has to be straightforward. It has to be clear. It has to be straight to the point. Okay. Now, if I want to see if not I want to see here we explain what's the difference between UX and UI. So if it's always confusing for people to differentiate, especially if they're not indirectly in the field. So if you want to think about it, UX, we just said that UX is the way and how you feel when you're using a product. UI, which is the user interface, it's how people interact with the product. So UX is the end feeling. It's the end result, is the sum of all the steps you've done to be able to accomplish a good UI. And I explain it usually, that's my favorite example, and a lot of people use it to explain the difference between UX and UI. It's the ketchup example. So if you see this ketchup bottle, the glass one, I'm sure many of you had the frustration to reach the end of the bottle where you have a bit of ketchup, and you're not able to use it. So you either need a spoon or you need, a knife, and you need to shake the bottle, and sometimes you have more than you even wanted. So that was a very frustrating experience. And what they did to change the experience is they created the other one. They switched the bottle to be able, and the top of the bottle to be like that, and they made it plastic so that you can squeeze. And it made the experience much easier, much faster, much more effective. Even though if you want to think about it in terms of UI, personally, I feel that the glass bottle is much nicer. Glass is always better for the environment, and items in glass, they definitely taste much better. But if you want to think of the experience, the UX of it for the one to the right is much more effective. Much less, it's less frustrating for users. So this is what, when we think about it, about designing the product and designing the experience, sometimes the UI can be great, it can look amazing, but people cannot use it the way that we want to. And one wouldn't work without the other. So if we had a great user experience and the product doesn't look nice, or the interface, the colors are not exciting, not just exciting, are confusing, or they're overwhelming for users, also it's not a good experience. So we need a good balance between UX and UI to be able to have a good experience for products. And if you want to think about it in other terms, of having like a cereal, so the content is the cereal, the user interface is the spoon, and the whole thing of us having cereal every day in the morning is the actual user experience. So these are the elements of both UX and UI. And I always say it, that it's very important to have separate people doing this, even though, yes, some people can do both together. But as you can see, the tasks are very, we have so many tasks for both. So it's very important, at least if someone is doing UX and UI, not to be doing everything at the same time. With UX, we start with interaction design, meaning we specify each element on a page or on a website or even on a product. It doesn't have to be always a tech product. User experience can even be on a chair, on a door. So it has to be with the interaction, how users are interacting with it, what happens, how do we start, where do they click, where do they go next. Wireframes and prototypes, I don't know if many of you know, but like what wireframes and prototypes are, they're a black and white display of the application or product. So they're not designed, they're what we call a prototype. They can be clickable and they can actually reflect the actual experience, but they're not designed. And we usually test this on the level of products even before we get to the design, because the best feedback personally we get is at this stage. When you give your wireframes and prototypes to a customer or potential customer, and you ask them to interact with it and see the experience, when it's black and white, one, they understand that it's not functional. Two, they understand you're here for feedback. They're not giving you feedback about colors, because I mean, also colors, we're very subject. Each of us has a preference. So sometimes I can look at the design and I can love it, and another person can hate it because they don't like the colors. So at this point, we're not getting that type of feedback. We're getting the feedback on the interaction, on the content. Also, when you give a UI or a visual design to a customer, most of the time they think that it's a working prototype because it looks real. So that's why it's good to test at that point as well. But the most important thing, the cheapest actually, is to test at this stage when we're just testing a sketch and a prototype that is not functional. It's just a black and white display of our elements. Information architecture is how our pages fall under each other, and we also do it here, especially for websites that have a lot of pages and a lot of interactions. When we think of, for example, bank, when we think of a university, when we think of big companies that probably have a lot of pages and a lot of steps to reach specific content, it's very important to think of the architecture and think of what falls under what and how many steps users are taking to reach a specific page. Also, user research, which is user interviews. So at the beginning, we need to do user interviews, we need to do surveys, we need to try to understand the audience of our product. Also, testing and understanding how they're going to react to what we're creating right now. Also, scenarios, it's the most critical thing in product design, and a lot of companies overlook, is thinking of what we call the edge cases and the boundary cases. So we always think of the best journey and the easiest journey for a user, and we overlook what can go wrong. We don't think of what can go wrong. What happens if a user wants to cancel? What happens if a user, the app crashed and they weren't able to do this? So we need to be able to think of scenarios before they happen so that we tackle them in the experience. And there's no way you can think of everything yet, but you can at least have a few thought about before you launch your product or launch a new version of your product. And then we move to UI, which we have the visual design, the colors, the graphic design, layouts, and the typography. And it's also very important to lock the first part to the left before we get to the UI designer. I don't know if we have UI designers in the house, but I think the most frustrating thing when you get a feedback from a client that I don't like this, and you don't understand if they don't like the functionality or they don't like the colors. That's why it's very important to lock the UX beforehand and not go through all of these changes in colors and journeys and interactions at another stage. And that's why we try to keep them separate in terms of phases. Also, UI considers a lot of creativity, while UX needs a lot of analytical mindset and strategic. The challenge in UX is actually talking to people, because you cannot come up with UX sitting behind the desk and try to analyze on your own. You need to be able to talk to people, to understand their needs, to understand their pain points, to be able to design the best experience. I'm going to see if we have any questions. Okay, so I'm going to go on. Also, the challenge as well in UX and UI design, that's one example that I use. Also design also what's necessary. So if a UI designer asks what color should the button be, so the user will see it immediately, UX designer should ask, do we really need that? Do we even need that button in the first place? And that's the challenge, that we shouldn't put anything on a screen or interaction that is not necessary. We should not ask people to add something that is optional, because they're not going to do it unless it's going to help them in their journey. So we have to make it the simplest and with the least friction from the customer. And also I use this, and I'm sure you've all had that, like, why do we need to add a credit card if it's a free trial? And I also see it a lot from the companies and the startups that I work with. I mean, if we consider Netflix, we know that Netflix, if you want to sign up, you have to add your credit card information and you would get your 30-day trial. But unless you become Netflix, you cannot ask your customers to do that, because you have to build trust. You have to build trust, and you have to show that you have a bigger audience before you get here. So it's very important also to understand where you are in the product journey as a launch. Who are you with your customer, and how much do they trust you before you ask information? Same thing for registration forms, and I think it's the biggest challenge for a lot of people. We have the biggest drop off in registrations that are overwhelming. So if you need your customer to give you their name, their age, where they live, and all of this data, you do not have to add them from a first step. You can just get them to sign up with a first name, with an email and password right away, then take them into a journey of filling in their profile. Also, because I mean, you can also test it with yourself. A lot of time, if you get to a form and you see that there are so many things that you need to fill, you can either say, I'll do it later, or you might be trying to fill it and something came and distracted you and you never came back. So we need to keep users focused as much as possible in the journey to be able to get them to at least become a first, like to become a customer with us, to sign up, to show that they're interested, and then we can take it in the journey. Okay, so if we want to think of how UI and UX work together for people who are in the development field, this should be easy for you, or this should be traditional, but a UX designer, user experience designer, would work on the research, the information design, interaction design, and the visual design, which also can be shared by a graphic designer. A graphic designer can work on the visual design and the interaction design together. I mean, sorry, the user experience designer doesn't work on the visual design, but the graphic designer can also participate in the interaction design. This is where they overlap. Then the developer, we have what we call the UI developer, or if you hear the term front-end developer. The front-end developer can also, they will use the visual design, the interaction design, to be able to design the front end, the HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript of the interface. And then also the application developer works with the UI developer, and also can be someone who can work on the front end and also on the back end. So this is the ideal if you want product flow. Not all companies have the luxury of having all of these people, but the more we have this, the more we have an efficient flow and collaboration, because each of these will add something to the table because of their role, because of their qualification, and because of the work done. Especially on big products, this is more seen on big products than on startups and smaller companies that are launching a new product. Do we have any questions so far? But it's easier to make users sub to it if they already have 80% of the process done. Subscribe to it if they already have. Okay, I get your question, Taima. True, but at the same time, you might be, I mean, some people, you might be scaring people off. So if they're not sure they want to use you, they might not even give you your credit card information. I'm saying if you are someone who is known, yes, they might actually go through the process because they trust you, they know that you won't steal the credit card information, and they probably know that, and you probably know that you're going to be using them. But if you're a new product, this might get people to actually not even sign up. This might get people to sometimes give you fake information if you're asking for them for. I'm sure a lot of you as well, when you sign up for a new product, you do not use your current email. You use something else. And if you're, that same thing, if you're signing up for a product you don't know if you want to use, and we're asking you for first name, last name, age, and birth date, and everything, or birth date and location, also you might not give the right information. All I'm saying here is if you can minimize the drop-off of users, get them to trust you and come back and see the experience before they decide they don't want to use you. And yes, I think we all do the temporary email thing. So some of the UX myths that I like to share with you, these are my favorite based on all the clients and people that I've worked with. So the myth number one, which is you are not the user. And for startup owners, startup founders here, or even product owners, whenever you find yourself saying, but I wouldn't do that, or me as a user, I wouldn't do that, I would beg you to stop and consider that if you're lucky, you're one type of user for your product. I'm not saying you will not be using the product. A lot of products are done because of what we call user innovation. You're creating something that you felt is needed or you want in the market. But also, where so many people in this room today, in this session, and each of us is different. Each of us has different experiences, have different needs, different product that they use, so we're used to different standards. You're lucky if you're one type of user, so that's why you need to always understand how other users function and how other users would want things. So products done from one user perspective are bound to fail. And we'll see later in the process of how to cater for more. Myth number two, and this is also something that happens with a lot of startups, is we go which is users can tell you what they want. We go and ask users a lot of time, and in surveys and in interviews, what would you want, and what would you want in your product, and what makes you use a product more than the other. And we sometimes tell them, if we're a startup, we actually tell them our idea and ask them the $1 million question: when we launch, would you use our product? And whenever they tell us yes, we take it as a confirmation, and we're very happy, and we take it as a validation. I'm going to tell you that this is not a validation at all, because what people say, what they do, and what they say they do are entirely different things. First of all, when you go and ask people, sometimes they're your friends and they don't want to make you feel bad by telling you, no, I wouldn't use it. The second thing, sometimes we go and ask people, I mean, if you had an app that does this and it just costs $0.99, would you use it? Some people would not tell us that they don't even spend $0.99 on an app, so that they don't sound cheap. And it's not about cheap. A lot of times you would pay $10 for a product, but not $1. It's because you didn't see the value of that specific product. Also, you don't know how the experience would be, so you wouldn't know if you'd actually use it or not. And the last part is that people are not designers. So if we go and ask them exactly how they want the product to function, I mean, they shouldn't know, or they would have designed it themselves. So it's very important. And what's the trick here? It's not about customers. You have to ask people. And you have to ask people more than you're actually doing. You have to ask them, what are their pain points? You have to try to understand them. You have to understand what are their needs. What's a regular day for them? What other product they actually use? And what are the things they hate in other products? What are the things that they like in product? Your job, if you're doing UX design, product design, or any startup or company, it's for you to understand their needs and you design it for them. You're supposed to be the expert, not them. Myth number 3 is that UX ends when people leave your app. And when we say leave your app, it means when they sign out, when they close the application. It's very important when we say before, during, and after. Before is how do we convince them that they should use us. During, how do they interact with us. And after they've used us, how do we engage them and get them to come back? How do we tell them that we have new features? So the communication should never stop, because even if they're if they have us on our phone, on their phone, and they have notifications on, they could have uninstalled us. They could have forgotten about us. So we should always remind them of what we're doing. We should always tell them if there's something they need to do on the app, we need to tell them, we need to be proactive. And of course, without spamming, but sending them regular updates. If we're launching new features, we should also tell them about these features. Myth number 4, which is users don't change. And I think this phase is the biggest proof that for change for human beings. I mean, I think we're changing a lot in the way we interact when it comes to work, when it comes to products, ordering products. I mean, even here in Lebanon, that now everyone is ordering everything online, which wasn't the case. A lot of people weren't doing that before. Same thing if you want to think about it before. Like, I don't think 10 years ago, if you would have told someone that you're going to be riding in someone's car, that you're going to order on an app, people would have told you, no, I wouldn't do that. Or same thing, I think people would have told you, if they think of the idea that you can go stay at someone's place and pay them for their room, people would also say, no, there's no way I'm going to sit in live in someone's apartment and pay them for it. The idea is that people change. If we give them something that solves a problem or a need for them, people do change. It's just about figuring out their real pains and tackling them, and not just doing something that's nice to have. Myth number 5, which is UX is common sense, and I hear it a lot. I mean, it's going to be easy. How hard could it be to do a registration process? And I'm going to tell you, there are millions ways to do a registration process or a sign up for any application. But UX is actually years of behavioral science. When we say behavioral science is when it comes to colors, when it comes to words, when it comes to interactions, what works more for users. It's years of best practices as well. There are standards. There are standards that we follow and we use to understand applications and product design. So we have to follow them. And it's also research and evaluation. And it's testing, and a lot of testing. I mean, I'm going to share this. I've been doing this for 12 years, and there's no way I can say that I designed the best application without testing it. I mean, that's counter intuitive. There's no way you're going to find that what you designed is hard. And that's a challenge for every single person working on a product, because you're not going to find it hard. You've memorized it, you've designed it, you've tested it, you've worked with it. You're never going to find it hard or confusing. So it's very important to test, to be able to validate what you're trying to create. And finally, no, there's one more. The myth number 6 is that UX is just one step in the process. And I also hear it a lot that people come and say, we're going to do UX now and that's it. Okay, I'll answer you Azza in a bit. So so UX is not just one step in the process. UX is the whole process. First, you need to think of the concept, the prototype. Yeah, then you need to prototype. You need to validate internally with your team, co-founders, people you're working with. Text externally with people who either know about you or people who have no idea who you are. Then you need to learn from their behavior, and finally, you need to iterate. So meaning, also, when you learn from your behavior, it doesn't mean that we say, okay, they've done this and they didn't know how to use it, but it's fine, they learn. No, we need to fix this before we iterate. It's very important. And when testing a product for a broad audience, how many testers is a good sample? Honestly, for testing products that are active, I've seen us come up with good results just for as low as 5 users. And when we say 5 users, it means 5 users that match your target audience and your persona. So 5 different target audience, but 1 is enough. If we figured out that 1 user didn't know how to use our application and this person is a potential customer, then we need to fix it. We don't need 100. We would need a lot of testers if we want to do quantitative analytics. And this is about if they're finding our buttons faster, not if the application is user-friendly. So we do quantitative analytics, or like the Google Analytics, or we watch them use it and see how much time they're spending on the product, just to be able to know how to optimize it. But to know if an application is user-friendly, you only need 5 users to be able to come up with a proper analysis of the product. Myth number 7, and I hear this a lot, that design has to be original. And what I mean by original is that it has to be different and it has to be creative and out of the box. Yes, it's great to have creative products and out of the box, but at the same time, we need to follow trends. And the more we can follow products that people know how to use, the less we can keep our users guessing. And I say by this examples, like if we're creating a product that has a news feed and we want to use the like functionality, we do not need to create something else, or we shouldn't like create the like but create a new icon for it. Let's use the standards. I mean, people use today either the thumbs up button icon, or the heart. Let's use it, especially if you're a new product. If you're a new application or a new product, you need to follow the trends, because you need to create the minimum friction, minimum second guessing. And you don't want people trying to click on something and not figure out what it is. Because you also see, I mean, this is what I see with a lot of, when I test with people, we have different kind of products. The younger are much more adventurous in product, whenever they're using products. So they'd be clicking, they would be trying to see how this works. If we're talking to an older age, they're more cautious. And sometimes not knowing what happens if you click here can make them anxious, so they don't click it. And you can see it, maybe some of you with your parents, you would see that they're very reluctant to do things because they don't want to make mistakes, and they don't know if they made a mistake, how to undo it. So the least we can create this anxiety for users, or second guessing. Every millisecond we take from a user can get them to leave before they complete the action. Especially if your product is a mobile app. You have to know that, not to have to know, a mobile app, you have the least attention span of a user, because they could get a call, they could get a message, they could get a notification, you can just forget it all about you. So if your registration process is a 3-step process until you're done, until you actually know who they are, then you might lose them throughout the process very fast. Okay. Some of the design failures that I want to share with you, these are just funny. And so this guy, I mean, when they designed this ATM, I mean, they didn't consider the where it's going to be there. So that's when we that's when we have to consider when we're designing product, that there are different elements we need to consider. One, we need to understand where it's going to be put, and what are the criteria, not criteria, what are the demographics of people, where would it be, to be able to make sure we get a good design. Also, this is something we consider for the boundary cases, that this is a nice motto to have on a pen, but while you're using it, you can reach a phase where you can tell people do drugs or drugs. This thing, I mean, this design, I mean, they just they hung the whole family with the pharmacy. Also, this, I don't know if you've seen it, but I've seen it in so many elevators. This is designed for people who are blind, so they can, when they put their finger on a specific floor, like button, they would know which floor, because it's written on it, so they can feel it. So what they did here is they probably fixed it for the blind, but they messed it up for everyone else. This product, I mean, yes, it's great to have 2-in-1, but I don't know who's going to use both of them together. Also, this spray, cooking spray, you have a Sin company who did a cooking spray and an insect killer, and it's exactly the same thing. And I'm sure none of you wants to mess up using these. So it's very important when we're designing products to visually differentiate what we're using. Also, this, I mean, I'm sure many people would have fallen from these stairs. Also this, and also this example, also I see it in a lot of websites, because they assume that if some designers assume that if you use the same font, people will read it together. Not all people are designers, and not all people focus that the same font is read together. So here, I mean, this is just, maybe this is done on purpose, but it's funny that you can read it, don't worry, be happy, or just don't be happy, worry. And it just takes one simple test to be able to identify it. And the product that I'm just using it as an example, I think you all know Google Glass. Google Glass was a product that was great idea at first, and when we all heard about it, I mean, this is amazing, this is innovative, but when they implemented, this is the product that was done with the least empathy possible, because one, they didn't, first, the product wasn't visually appealing to people to use it. It was very expensive. And when they launched it, they realized that no one wants their life to be recorded all the time. And also, no one wants to be in someone else's vision and record it all the time. So these are product failures because when they did the testing, initial testing, they didn't think of all of these perspectives, or at least they didn't try to understand the reason. Why would someone really need it? What's the pain you're actually solving? A lot of products end up being nice to have products. And a nice to have product doesn't have the sticky factor, doesn't make people come back, and is forgotten really fast. Okay. And why do I say people over pixels, and why do I call this presentation people over pixels? Well, one, because, yes, who has a question? Someone wants to ask a question? Okay, if you have a question, you can type it directly in the chat, and I'll answer in a bit. So why people over pixel? One, UX reduces human frustration, and especially in situations that we can consider like this situation that we're all in. There's a lot of frustration for people. They are in a place where they cannot do the same thing, the things that they were able to do before. They are stuck in their homes. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of change in their life. So when you create products that actually help them solve a problem, whatever it is, it reduces whatever frustration they have. And usually human frustrations, most of the time, are related actually to time, financial, and mainly speed and financial stuff. So the more you can think of things like that, or things they weren't able to do before, the more you can make people happier as well. Another one, it increases sales. Of course, if the UX is straightforward and easy, people are going to buy. People are going to come back for more. If your product is a subscription product, they're going to subscribe again. They're going to upgrade. If your product is an online shop, they're going to come and buy more. If the experience is easy, they're going to add more stuff. They're going to check out, and they're gonna be able to even recommend you to others. It increases user engagement. It also, the more your UX is straightforward, the more they're coming back, the more they're doing actions, the more they're sharing. Good UX creates loyalty, and it's the same thing. You have a lot of product that does the same thing. Why would you use one product and not the other? Why would you use Careem and not Uber? Why would you use Expedia for hotels booking, not Booking.com? Why would you use Gmail or not Microsoft or Outlook? So all of these things are reasons why people are loyal to specific products. And it's because of the experience they create, and it's about how people felt when they're using a product. It also empowers people. When people feel like they're smart and that they're doing something they weren't able to do before, they save time, they save money, people feel empowered, and that's what we want also to do. I don't think any of you, if you're working on product, are doing something that is not supposed to help people in some way. So when you do it properly, you actually empower people to come back and to do more and feel good about themselves. Now, what's the design process that we should follow? How many of you, do we have people who are, let's say, they work in a startup? Or you're startup founders? Yes? More people? Any more people? Okay. We have one. Okay. So, okay. So in a startup, I mean, or even in a small team, the biggest challenge when we're working, we said when we're designing products, we have the UX designer, the co-founder, the researcher, the UI designer, the developer. A lot of time we have even the QA engineer, someone who does the testing, the marketing person. It's very important, and I think the currency of good UX is getting a shared understanding from everyone and getting everyone in the same room to solve the problem together. When I'm saying everyone, it doesn't have to be 100 people. I know that some companies, there's so many people working in the company, but get the key stakeholders, people who have the biggest stake, one at least from each, to get different angles figured out. And you sit and you solve the problem together, you brainstorm, you understand at least what you're trying to solve. And also, it's one of the things that I saw a lot in startups. If I went and asked every single person in the startup, what are you trying to solve and who's the audience, I used to get a different answer from each team member. And this is the first thing this is the first, if you want, recipe for a confusing customer journey and user experience, is when the team doesn't know exactly who we're working for. So the first thing is sit in the same room. The first thing we should do is sit in the same room and solve the problem together as a team. And how do we do that? These are the tools that I'm going to tell you that we use in product design. The first one is called the empathy map. What's an empathy map and why do we need it? With the empathy map, we create like a fictional persona. So we can say, I'm doing this empathy map for someone who's 25, female, living in Dubai, and she just moved into Dubai. So we create a persona. Of course, that persona needs to match who we're targeting with our product. And we try to answer all of these questions. What does she think and feel? What does she hear? What does she see? What does she say and do? And what are her pains and what are her needs? And we do it as an activity where each person tries to think of one of these aspects and all of them together. The main purpose of this is to understand how much do we know our customer? How much do we know what they really need? How much do we know what's a regular day for them? How much do we know what kind of products do they use? And that's how we design empathy. And that's how we start understanding how to solve our problems need. And this exercise is a mine for ideas. I mean, a lot of time we do this just to be able to think of the new features we want to come up with. So it's the first start to do this, to say, I figured out who my persona is. To be able to come up with, after the empathy map, we have to define the persona, which is from an empathy map. We specify the name, we give this person a name. It's very important to give this person a name and a sketch. And sometimes we give them a picture, not sometimes. We give them a picture. It doesn't have to be real. Actually, it shouldn't be real. It shouldn't be someone who exists in real life, not as a picture or as a name. This is a stereotype. We give them behavioral demographic information, age, location, income, what are their pain points and what are the potential solutions that they need. So we start with something like this to end up with something that looks more like this. The reason why we do this is to put on paper. A lot of startups or companies, they just hang it on their walls just to know who we're designing for, because it's much better to say, what would Stephanie want, than say, what would a 23 to 28-year-old want? When we're designing for an audience and we think of a target audience, we will never be able to empathize. We will never be able to tackle what our customer really wants, or at least do it in a more human oriented way. When we give them a name, when we give them a story, it's also easier to explain it to others. When we read this, we read about the background of this person, what's a code, why would she come here, what are her goals, how are the technical skills, what products does she use, for us to know really what this person wants. And I've seen products design process and enhance, majorly, because they've done this exercise, because they actually understand it. And also one thing that I've seen a lot of companies and startups is excitement. Now that they know who they're designing for, they're much more excited. They come up with more ideas, especially with developers and designers, especially developers and people who are working on the code. A lot of time we don't tell them this because we don't think they need to know that. While they're the ones designing this, they need to understand, if this person is very short on time, we should not make it a complicated step. We should make it faster. So all of these are important when it comes to product design. After this, we create the customer journey, which is the elaboration of what the customer does when they're using our product. Also remember, no one is here to do everything at the same time, and they grow with us. So at the start, they might not know who we are. They might have no idea who we are. This is the role of a landing page or a homepage of a website. So we need to think at this stage, what does our customer know? What would they want to see, so that we put it there? When they consider our products, what would they want? What are the features that they need? What are things that can go wrong? So what happens in this step is we tackle every step in the journey. So if we're talking about an online shop, let's say, so the first start is when they land on the shop, when they understand where do they deliver. First, they search for a product, they go to the product page, they add to carts, they buy the product, they do the payment, and then they receive the product. So all of these are things we need to consider, and each of these journeys has boundary cases. So if they added the product to cart and they bought it, what happens when they want to cancel? Can they cancel? All of these things, we think about them at this stage, and this is why this is a great exercise for us to know what features do we want. Anything that's not solving a problem or a pain for a user in this journey should not be on the application. At least if you're working on a minimum viable product or a first phase, you should not consider features like that. You should only consider the key features. And also you should consider the critical ones, not just the nice to have ones. So this, we end up with something that looks more like this, where we have the milestone, what are the goals, what's the customer journey, on which channels they are, how their experience is like. I also add the KPI, what's the performance indicator for this? So how do I know that I've done this right? That they sign up, that they send a form, that they buy something? What are challenges you might face, and what are potential solutions? When you do it this way and you think of all of these elements, you definitely get your product and experience done better. And this is done, these two personas and customer journey are done before we start sketching anything. So at this point, we're not thinking how the interface looks like. And here, after we've done these and we thought of products and features, we prioritize the features. If we have a time limit, cost limit, and I'm sure every company and product has this, this is a way that I prioritize products, is we think of all the features, we think of technical feasibility, what's the impact on UI and UX feasibility, what's the impact on the user, what's the impact on the business, and give it an overall score. Because remember, you need to give value to the user as important as giving value to yourself. as a customer, as a business. So it's very important to think of both and to see what do you want as a start, to get your customer to love you and to know how you work, or get money first. That's why a lot of companies, they postpone this a step later. And then we have the information architecture that I was telling you about. This is example of a complicated website that has all of these boxes or pages. Each of this, I mean, here, this is the home page. This is, for example, the menu, what falls under each menu. One, this is important for us to know how many pages do we have, what do we want in terms of content. So imagine you're developing this and there's also someone who's writing the content. You need to give them a proper content inventory for them to be able to develop it. How do you update this? How these pages work together? So this is mainly for complicated structured websites. So the first step is doing all of those, and that's what we call the discovery analysis. That's what I call the discovery and analysis. We're trying to understand the audience. We do interviews, we do user research, we figure out our personas. And I mentioned before, like the personas, we do them always, they have to be well researched. I know that sometimes we are short on time and we do them based on assumptions, but we need to test them. So if you created 4 or 5 personas for your product and you weren't able to find anyone that matches your persona, then you've done something wrong. You need to review the personas. You need to be able to find them in real life as a stereotype, not necessarily exactly the same, but at least they should match 60 or 70% of how that person is. The second step in the product design phase is visualization, in which we start sketching. I mean, sketching can be as simple as writing on a piece of paper and sketching, on a piece of paper. And it's very effective because you're starting to put things into drawings, you're brainstorming together, people are starting to see what you're thinking. And also we test sometimes on a level of a paper prototype before we get into what we call the wireframe. This is what I was saying, the wireframe and the prototype. It's also black and white. It looks neat, it should look nice, but it's not a design. It should have all the elements. So yes, people, when they click here, they will log in, they will come here. So it actually reflects the actual interaction, but it's not a design. And after you do this, you validate, you create a prototype, which is what we're saying, like you can prototype at anything. I mean, even if your product is a hardware, I've seen a lot of startups, they even prototype how that physically look like to see if it would fit in the space, or if it would even to test the experience of when people are navigating or using the product. It doesn't have to be functional. It will not be functional. Some products need years to be developed, but at least when you create a prototype, you can have a better feel of how that product would look like. So it's the fastest and cheapest way to find out what doesn't work, and it allows you to know how you can enhance the experience and reach your users' needs better and faster. This is one example. I mean, if we think of the Apple Watch or the wearables, I mean, just simply as putting something on your hand and seeing if people would use it sometimes can give you a validation. I know this is a simple example, but a lot of times it's really as simple as that to figure out if some people would use our products or not. So we're talking about this prototyping, digital prototyping. This is another example. And then HTML prototyping is when you actually code it. I'm going to go through these fast because it's, yeah. So testing strategies, and this is what I wanted to tackle because it's very important for people to understand how to test this, how to test the product and prototype. So the rule number one is you need to test with a user that matches your persona. So as I was asking how many people to test, you need to test with at least 5 people. Each of them should match a specific persona. If you've done your exercise right, this should be enough. And don't tell their users what to expect. So don't tell them what the idea is about. The first thing that a lot of startup owners or product owners, they sit with the tester, they tell them, this is a product that does this and that, and they explain the whole idea. I mean, this is nice if you're giving them background, but at the same time, the first thing you need to be able to test if they understand what your product does without you having to explain it. So the first, we always go with a script. It's never an improvised test. We go with a script. We ask them to try our product first, to land on the homepage, download the app, or tell them that this is how now you downloaded the app. Get them to navigate. and see if they understand what it does. So you get them to navigate, you don't tell them anything, and then you ask them, do you know what our product does? Their answer should give you a validation if you've done the first step correctly. Then you need to always give them a specific journey, especially if you're testing a prototype, it's not functional and they're not using it. So you cannot tell them, okay, please go use your app, my app, and tell me what you think. The feedback is never going to be relevant. So the first thing that you're going to say, you tell them, please, now I want you to try to register to this product, or sign in, or try to buy this product. Always give them guidelines. Tell them what they're supposed to do, as if you're giving them the journey that they're going to be doing later. You tell them what they need to do, you watch them use it and do it, and then you ask them out loud what they're thinking. And this is what gives you the feedback that you want. And ask them if they understand every interaction. Based on the feedback, you review and enhance accordingly. Also, when someone tells you, I didn't know how to do this, you don't jump and tell them, it's easy, you should have done that. If they didn't know how to do it, this means that someone else will not know how to do it, and you will not be able to explain it because you won't be next to them. So it's very important that you get all their feedback. And it's very important when you start with the user testing to tell them that if there's something that they didn't understand, it's actually on you, not on them. Because also people will feel like they're being tested for their intelligence. I've seen a lot of people panic in user testing because they would think that, we would be disappointed, or it's their fault if they didn't do it. So it's very important to let them understand this. Number 4, it's do with the design, which is the UI design, the interaction, the colors, all the elements that you use that make it actually a desirable user interface. Also, this should be tested because also sometimes we create elements that people think they're clickable and they're not. Sometimes we realize that things are not clear. So it's also very important to test this. There are lots of tools also to allow us to test the UI design. Same thing we do with the UX, but now we're giving them a visual feel. We can get their feedback on the branding, on the colors, and everything. And it's also, we don't need a lot of users, so 5 users are enough. Then this is when you start developing. This is when you start the actual coding of a product, or if it's a hardware, the actual implementation of a product. And this is what I was saying, we only need 5 testers to solve 85% of the problems. We do not need more. After 5, you would see that the feedback is repetitive. So you do 5, you fix the feedback, because sometimes the feedback will also affect other features. You fix it, and then you will you will enhance. Then number 6, you start getting feedback and improve. This is very important. Also, I see a lot of products that do not create a channel for their customers to send feedback. So if people are not telling you, or they're not giving you bad feedback, it doesn't mean that your product is good, or it's working properly. If you're an app, they could have removed you. If you're a website, they could have not signed in anymore. So you also need to always give people a way to understand, to tell you what happened. So if they signed up, send them an email asking them how that went. If they haven't been visiting, ask them if anything wrong. Try to understand, try to be proactive in getting feedback, not also always count on them. And that's one example. I think our users are happy. I haven't heard any complaint, but you see they have not even allowed people to give them any feedback. And the last step in the process is measure success. Which is also something that I want to tackle when it comes to metrics. How do we measure success? How do we know if we've done a good job? And this is also thought about at the level of the journey design. We need to understand what's a good metric and what's a bad, useful metric. So I see a lot of people that tell me, I have 25,000 registered users. That's an unhelpful metric, because all of these people could be not even using the product anymore. So the number is not indicative, which is what we call, the vanity metric. Unhelpful is the number of people who came and who signed up let's say per week, per day, or per month. The vanity is the total. A good metric is the number of users, new users per week. That means that I'm doing something right, or at least my marketing is working. A better metric is the number of users who sign in at least 3 times a day per week, meaning they're engaged. This is a good engagement, meaning they're coming back. And a great metric is the number of users who share a task 3 times a day per week. That's an example of a great metric. And that's what you need to be able to understand, because when you understand what's a good metric for your product, you know how to work on it and how to fix it. So this is what you need to be comparing over time, more than just the number of signups, because the number of signups and registered users can sometimes not give us any indication of how we're doing in the experience. These are tools. I'm just going to go over them quickly. I can share them as well with you if you guys want. So for surveys, these are the 3 tools that allow you to do surveys. Some of them are free. Google Forms is great and very easy. Also for surveys, be careful about surveys that the input of surveys should be quantitative. I need a lot of people to give me an answer. The more you can interview people in person, the better it is, because you'll be able to empathize with them. You'll be able to get real answers from them. People are talkative. A lot of time they tell us stuff they will never tell in a survey. You can also get web analytics for your product, try to see how they're functioning. These are tools that allow you to do this. Landing pages also, they allow us, we can design a website and a page very quickly with these landing pages. There are definitely much more now. This is, I think, a year ago. Wireframes and prototypes, these are tools that I use. I use UXPin, it's really great. It allows me to prototype, it allows me to test. I use Adobe XD as well. All the others that can be used for testing and even UI design, like Sketch and even Adobe XD. User testing, these are tools that allow you to actually do user tests. Some of them you can hire users to conduct testing on your website. Others, like Hotjar, you can put a script on your website and it actually can record how users are using your product. A/B testing and MVT testing, I'm going to explain them what they are. A/B testing is when you want to create, as you can see here, I have 2 pages. I have a landing page, but I want to know if it's better to keep my button to the left, the sign up button to the left or to the right. We do what we call an A/B testing. We create the same version of the page, but some users get the one with the button to the right and the others get the button to the left. And based on what is more clicked or what is more engaging, we decide which one to use. I mean, we need a lot of people to do this. We need a quantity of people, not just 5 people. But this is also mainly for marketing and email communication, just to know how to optimize our pages, websites, and things like that. There are tools as well that allow us to do it. Also, multivariate testing is when we do more than one. So if we're confused on which design to go for, and we have like 3 or 4 designs, we can do multivariate testing. We can send the same screen, different screens for different types of people that does the same thing. And based on which one is more effective, we actually consider the last design. Feedback tool, we have feedback tools, we have Intercom, we have Palaru, and we have a lot of tools as well. Also, Hotjar gives us feedback to get people to rate the experience and tell us what we're doing. There are also today lots of chatbots and chat support features that you can add to your product that also gets you to start a communication channel with your customer. So now I think we're done with the presentation. I want to see if any of you has questions.
Lara, I have a question.
Yes.
Can you go back to the how can you evaluate if you've done a good job? I didn't get the last one, the excellent one.
With the metrics? Asa, you're talking about the metrics?
Yeah, the metrics.
Okay. I'm gonna share. Okay. So
the awesome one. Can you explain? I didn't get what it means.
Okay. So let's say your product is it's an application that allows people to let's say it's Facebook, okay? So you want to know how many people, if Facebook told you that they have 3 billion registered users, it's great, but you have no idea about the engagement. But if they told you that I have 80% of my users actually come and share a post at least once a day.
Okay, so it's this is kind of an example and like a specific example. It's not like a general thing.
No, it's always, it has to relate to what your product does. So let's say your product is an online delivery service, okay? So why do you want to know this metric? Because you want to know, Azza, that let's say this user orders, let's say once a week, okay? Then after a month, this person is ordering twice a week. And a lot of the week after they're ordering, let's say they're back to once a week. So this is what gets you to understand if this person or this kind of user is being engaged more or less. That's how you know if you're doing a good job or not. Of course, a good job meaning they're actually more engaged, they're doing more, they're buying more. Their cart was, let's say, $100, now it's $200.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, so it's not always the number of percentage of users who share a task. This is simply an example, but it's also.
I was thinking if it were like a physical product, it would be mostly just sales, no?
Sales, exactly. But for example, if it's a physical product, let's say you buy, I don't know, a phone. It's the first time, like how many times do they actually update their phone or buy a new phone? How many accessories do they buy? You know, so it's not just say, it's also the product. It's how much were you able to engage them and cross-sell other stuff to them, because that's what means that someone is happy with my product. You know, a lot of companies, their biggest failure is that they cater for the one-time purchase. So you buy something and then they're done. You know, for them, you spend the money. They don't think that they want you, actually, if you're happy, you're going to bring them more people. And if you're happy, you're going to come and actually buy more stuff from them.
Yeah. But for example, I was thinking, like, you know, nowadays, like celebrities who are on Instagram have like so many likes and stuff.
Yeah.
It's also, for me, it's kind of a wrong metric. Like, you can have 1 million likes on a product, but if no one's buying it, I mean, what's the use?
Yes, and that's actually, yeah, sorry.
So in this case, are there like, I mean, would Instagram like change their metrics based on this?
Okay, so this is a great example, Azza, because it's a big challenge in the influencer marketing nowadays. Because you can go to an influencer who has 2 million followers, you post your content. This is what a lot of businesses are doing. You have no idea what's the conversion. What is this person bringing you? So it also depends on the reason why they're going to this influencer. If they want brand awareness, then yes, she might be, or this account might be giving them that. If it's actual sales, they need to be able to know that how much this post actually boosted their sales. So they're not. I don't think anyone is tackling yet properly in the whole scene in that way. But it's also, there's always a reason why you would want to consider a specific metric than another. So for an influencer, their good metric is the number of followers. This is what they care about. But also, if you looked at someone who has 2 million followers, but an engagement on a post is like 20,000 likes, I don't know if that's good or bad. That's actually probably good, but it was like 100 likes.
Yeah.
Then it's not this means that there's something not right in this account, or also you don't know who the audience is. You don't know if they match your needs. There are so many things that you need to consider.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, thank you. As an experienced professional in the UX market, how mature do you think this market is nowadays? I think people are getting more aware. Thank you, Mahmoud, for your question. I think people are getting more aware today with the UX because the competition is huge. And the time to market is becoming very fast. We're working in a very fast pace. So I think it's getting better, yet I think it's still very basic, especially in the region here. Maybe in the US or in even Europe, it's not that mature yet. It's a bit more advanced than here. In the US and Canada, it's much more advanced. But we're getting there. I think we're getting there. I think people are getting to understand that you really need to do proper UX to be able to get your sales better. Startups are starting to understand it. I work with a lot of startups, and I'm amazed on how much they're aware of this, because either they've done it and they've hit a wall, or they're well properly introduced to it. So it's, I mean, I started, like, I can say in the past, over the past 5 years, it has dramatically improved in the region. Did I answer your question? I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your answer. Actually, I wanted also to, let's say, to learn more, because I know that big companies, they have always budget to do more, let's say, in-depth analysis and tests, like qualitative and quantitative tests. But let's say small to medium companies, maybe they don't have this budget to do that. So do you think that these kind of small to medium companies, they just follow the basic way of testing, as they have, let's say, more general products, but big companies, maybe they have more advanced products, or let's say new products to be added? So they want to invest more in the user experience research and testing and development.
I think it's different, honestly, Mahmoud, depending on the product. So if your company, let's say, I've seen products who are, let's say, smaller companies invest much more in UX than bigger companies, because their target is, they're reaching their customers through different channels. So it's not like we're talking about, I mean, let me say examples. If your product is something that you're introduced to universities or your banking application, people assume that people are going to use it anyway. So they invest less in it, even though they shouldn't. I mean, a bank is the biggest, if you want, person, like a entity that should invest in UX design. But if you think of, sometimes it depends on how much the product is supposed to work on its own targeting customer and not pushed by another entity. So if, for instance, I take it as example, like university, because I teach at a university, and we have this university system that is not very user-friendly, the most user-friendly, but I believe that everyone will make the effort to use it. So I don't think they're investing a lot in enhancing it, because as a student or as a teacher, you're gonna still make the effort. While if you're a startup that's launching today and you need to organically grow your users and you want people to come and enhance and be happy to use and engage with you, you'll need to invest even more. Big companies, they usually have a big budget, but they sometimes think that or let's say big product, they think that they can do it on their own and it's not that critical because they have the name. So today, if for instance, Apple has does a great job in UX design, product design and everything, but if they made a mistake, it's fine. You know, while smaller companies, it might be much more challenging. Startups, it might be more challenging. And also, it's harder for small companies to see the value because they always feel that they're going to invest a lot. So I always believe it's an incremental process. You shouldn't do everything at the same time and invest in everything at the same time. You can do few testing and see if you want to get a buy-in from people to do this. You can start with smaller design flows and design processes, and then enhance and do more over time, do more testing with users, invest more in it. The problem in the whole, let's say, region, coming back to your previous question, is always money, and always feeling that we don't need to invest it, we know how to do it, or we'll do it later. But people need to understand it's not always a lot of it. There are cheaper ways to get a good job, a job done right.
Thank you very much. I mean, exactly. I think besides the financial constraints, the lack of awareness about the importance of the user experience, because it's also somehow it's a new evolving concept
Yes.
somehow.
Yeah. Also the challenge, Mahmoud, because I face it a lot when people tell you, like, when you're UX designer, they don't see what you do. You know, when you're a UI designer, they see a design. When you're a developer, they see a code. But when you're a UX designer, or when you're doing UX design, they think that it's not needed, or they think that it's not as important. While it's just simply when you show someone how people are interacting with their products before you do the proper UX, if they already have a product, and you show them how much time we're taking from them or how confusing it is, this is when a lot of business owners, they realize that they need to do this. So people need to be educated as well. All the time, they need to be educated on the importance and what's the value. And that's how it works. Few people that come to you that really know the value from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the content and for the awesome presentation and the slides. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to hear that. Does it mean that if the audience, very interesting session, you're welcome. Does it mean that if audiences are not buying or subscribing to your product means it doesn't have a good UX? No, it doesn't. So, sorry if that's what you got. It's not always that it has bad UX, but you need to understand what it is. If your UX is good, at least you would know that the product is there's something and the experience is resolved. Sometimes the product is not solving a problem for the user. Sometimes maybe the pricing is the problem. Sometimes the content, and the content is part of the UX, but sometimes what you're giving as features is not really needed by product. So it's also very important to understand, that's why I was saying feedback. People leaving is not always a bad thing. It is a bad thing for you, but sometimes people leave products because they no longer need it. If, let's say, I am a UX designer and I use UXPin and I'm subscribed to UXPin, but I decided to stop being a UX designer and I no longer need the subscription, doesn't mean that UXPin is bad. It means that I as a user no longer need this. So that's why when someone unsubscribes or doesn't renew, it's very important to get feedback from them on why they're doing it. And you always get it. You always get people like products to send you, how did we do? Why are you leaving us? Why we miss you, come back. They need to understand to be able to know if there's something to fix in the experience. I hope I answered your question. How can someone improve the skills with UX? Any websites other than YouTube tutorials or videos? Yes, I can share with you. If all of those who want me to send you these details, can you write your emails in this chat, and I will send the details with all of these tools. There are few that I gathered here. So if you want to read good books about UX design, this is my favorite, Don Norman. This guy is amazing. He's the book Design of Everyday Things. Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug is also a great book. Lean UX, Designing Great Products with Agile Teams is another one. So these are the resources that are online that have a lot of content. NNGroup.com, this is the Nielsen Norman Group. They have great conferences, UX Week. They have great articles and videos. Smashing Magazine as well, they have great articles. Interaction Design, one of the founders of Interaction Design is also Don Norman. And this website has a lot of courses. This is a one-time subscription for courses, everything you want to know about UX, interaction design, empathy design, everything. You have this UX Myth where you can see more myth in UX design. UX Booth, it's a blog with a lot of content. Same thing with Blog.Usable. Yeah, there are so many tools online. These are my favorite, the ones that I follow. But also, if you want to learn more courses, interactiondesign.org is really amazing. Okay. Any more questions? Or I'm going to keep this if you want to. Sorry. No, not this, sorry. Okay, great. I'll get your email and I'll send you. Do developers only role in UX? I didn't get your question, Taima. Do developers? Taima, are you with us? Okay. Any more? I don't know if your question is if developers have a role in the UX and the UI. Developers, I mean, yes, everyone, I think that everyone needs to know what UX is and how it functions. I can't hear you, Taima. Okay, I'm going to answer Taima then Gibran. So you're asking if developers have a role in UX and UI. And yes, I mean, a lot of time when I'm working with developers, I actually, I mean, I appreciate sometimes the developers coming and telling me there's a better way to do it. Why don't you do it like that? There's something in the code that we can do it if we do it in another way. So also developers need to know what are the standards, what are the things, how to make a better experience, because not everything is done by a UX designer. Sometimes they have to do some decisions on their own and fast decisions on their own and enhancing products. But the better they know, the better they become as developers. They don't have to be the ones doing the UX design. Of course, they shouldn't. Not shouldn't. If they don't like it, they're or they don't have the time. As you see, we don't want to overload people with more stuff. But it's much better if they know how to do things, if they know how to optimize products. So yeah, I think they definitely should. How can you show your portfolio or work to your clients? That's a great question, Gibran. I mean, from my side, I can show, especially when products are done. It's a challenge for a UX designer because a lot of the things that we work on are confidential. So most of the time I create test use cases of case studies of what I've done with a client and the UX design. And if I'm working on a product that is existing, I show the before and after. So it's not just a screen. A screen of a wireframe is not enough for UX design, but it's also the personas, the customer journeys, the whole scenario of what you've done in the journey, because it has so many things that are being done in the process. Also, I hope I answered your question. Okay, great. Anyone else has a question? I'm going to take all your emails. Thank you for sharing them. I will send you the tools and I will send you the presentation and I will send you, I'll send you the presentation and you'll have all of these. Thank you guys for the feedback. I really appreciate it. Okay. So I'm going to keep this here. I think again, thank you for staying with me for an hour and a half. Also, I'll send you, I'll be doing more of these, more focused presentations. Yes, I'll be giving one on customer journey design and persona design. I'll be giving one on user testing, and I'll be giving one on the usability standards, especially for developers and designers. What are the 10 standards of usability, how to validate your product, and how to know if a product is good and usable. Others, I can do more applied workshops, sessions with smaller groups, I think, for customer journey design and personas. So I'll also send you by email all of these sessions. Great. So have a good day.